Without the refreshments, without the eggnog. Okay. If I could, I know. Sorry. I was a little busy. So, I would like to welcome you all to the December 4th meeting of the San Francisco Airport Community Roundtable, Noise Abatement Roundtable. And James, may we have the roll call, please?
How are we going to do this? How are we going to do this?
City and County of San Francisco Board of Supervisors. City and County of San Francisco Mayor's Office. City and County of San Francisco Airport Commission.
Ivar Satiro.
San Mateo County Board of Supervisors. CCAG Airport Land Use Commission. Town of Atherton.
Elizabeth Lewis.
City of Belmont. City of Brisbane. City of Burlingame. City of Daly City.
Pamela DiGiovanni, present.
City of Foster City. City of Half Moon Bay. Town of Hillsborough.
Present.
City of Menlo Park.
Yes, Menlo Park.
I think she just arrived.
Yes, Cecilia Taylor.
Can time that
Sit up here, around.
Oh, and Schneider Milbrae. I think you're sitting over here.
City of Pacifica.
Start moving around.
There you go.
City of Portola Valley.
Here.
City of Redwood City.
Janet Borgens for Giselle Hale.
City of San Bruno.
Here.
City of San Carlos. City of San Mateo.
Here. Diane Pepin.
City of South San Francisco. And Town of Woodside. I don't have quite a quorum just yet.
Janet, did you want to update the traffic conditions?
There was a four
Excuse
pile.
me?
There
Yes?
was a 4-car pileup northbound on 101.
Oh, on 1-1.
Yeah, I ended up having to take a back road. It was just stopped.
Okay. There was also a very large accident on 280.
On 280
that-
also, flip over.
Yeah, we came up. So we don't have a quorum, but we will go ahead and start the meeting, and we won't take any action items until we have a quorum. And let's see, James, did you get the
Yes,
gentleman?
City and County of San
San
Francisco
Francisco.
Mayor's Office.
Right, yes. Thank you for coming. So I will just go ahead and welcome everyone to the roundtable meeting, and we welcome our guest from the FAA Community Engagement Officer. Remind me of your name one more time. Skylar, that's right. Skylar Ron, okay. Thank you for being here. We'll open up for public comments. Charlie, you have one for another one? Or is that number 2? Okay, I think you already did one, okay. And just to refresh our memories about public comments, you'll get 2 minutes to speak. The roundtable it's on items that are not on the agenda, so the roundtable members are not permitted because of the Brown Act to respond or discuss or have dialogue, because if it's not on the agenda, then it's not a publicly noticed issue. It's called the Brown Act, which prevents us from discussing items that are not published on the agenda in a public forum. So I will welcome our first public speaker, whose name is Yvonne McHugh. She's from Point Richmond and Richmond. And at the table, she has given us a handout. She didn't have enough for everyone. It looks like this. So if you see some on your table and you can share it, it does have some slides. Yvonne, come up to the podium, please. And you will have 2 minutes, and I will begin the timer.
2 minutes.
Hello, my name is Dr. Yvonne McHugh. Let's make sure that it's on.
Yeah, get your mic.
There you go.
How's that? Better. Better, okay.
Good.
My name is Dr. Yvonne McHugh. I live in Point Richmond, California, part of the city of Richmond in Contra Costa County. Point Richmond is located adjacent to the east end of the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge, which crosses the bay from Richmond to San Rafael in Marin County. Point Richmond is 20 miles north of SFO and 16 miles northwest of Oakland International. Most importantly, for the concerns I'm expressing tonight, it is adjacent to the waypoint Rebus. My goal in speaking tonight is to obtain some relief from the dramatic and profound increase in jet noise we started experiencing in the late summer of this year. This could be remedied in large part by a decision of the FAA to use waypoint Wegna, located over the water near the center of the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge, instead of waypoint Rebus, which is located on land in Richmond, used by departing eastbound SFO and Oakland flights flying the West Plan. These departing flights are now severely impacting our sleep and our quality of life, especially from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., but throughout the day as well. At the point where departing SFO and Oakland flights fly over us, they are at high thrust to gain altitude, and this increases the noise and vibration many logs. It is especially distressing in that this location has an otherwise quiet soundscape. Using waypoint Wegna for arriving low-flying, slow Oakland flights flying the Southeast plan would provide great relief as well. I believe that the intense pulses of departing flights flying over us are likely the result of the new aircraft noise mitigation, hush, and night departure protocols for flights between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., which have been put in place to provide nighttime relief to residents and communities to the south of us. As Point Richmond is so far from SFO and Oakland, I believe the impact on us has been ignored, although it is severe. Using waypoint Wegna to direct flights over the bay would be a remedy. I'm also concerned that the proposed SFO night and Oakland hush departure southbound transitions will route more flights over us in the critical 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. time period. There's an indication there will be noise shifting, that is increased traffic and increased noise for communities in Contra Costa and Marin counties. Please do not let this happen to Point Richmond and Richmond. The time has come for the FAA to provide us relief from aircraft noise pollution, as well as our southern neighbors. Waypoint Rebus should be considered obsolete for the current air traffic to and from SFO and Oakland.
Yvonne, you've reached your 2 minutes. Thank you so much. Our next, speaker card, we'll welcome Charlie Wambach. Charlie, come on up. Oh, and James just announced that we do have a quorum, so we will continue on with our meeting with a full quorum. Thank you, Charlie.
I'm Charlie Wambach from San Francisco. I just looked up the Brown Act, 1953, and that's when it was passed. And it says for the public so they can attend meetings, but they don't have any say in the meetings. You know, you can just attend and listen to what all the other people have to say. So, and you know, it really is kind of an insult that we would start a meeting before we have a quorum, because it just goes to show what you think of the public here. So, I've been coming to these meetings for about 3 years, and I still can't figure out what to speak about. But all I know is that more and more and more airlines are taking off over our neighborhood. I live in southeast San Francisco in the Excelsior District. And more and more and more airlines are landing over our neighborhood now. You know, you have flights that are coming from Toronto, Canada, that fly over San Francisco, come down the peninsula and go over the San Mateo Bridge. You know, I used to fly a lot. I don't fly anymore. I haven't flown for 15 years, and I don't plan on getting another flight if I can possibly help it. And I feel like going out and picketing at the airport with my pajamas, saying you're ruining my life, okay? Because that's exactly what's happening, okay? This next gen, and if there are any FAA representatives here, I curse you to hell every day for keeping next gen going. It's horrible, and that I don't know what else to say. I'm frustrated. And I was hoping that I would see our San Francisco representative here today. I'm not sure if Mr. McCaffrey, hey, thank you. Glad meeting you. Okay. I hope that you stand up for San Francisco, because we haven't had much representation since I've been coming to these meetings since early 2016.
Thank you, Charlie. The next speaker is Doreen Gottlieb, and then Ashley Hathaway.
I haven't even started talking yet. Hi, my name is Doreen
This was
Gotelli.
a test. This was just a test.
Oh, okay.
Go.
My name is Doreen Gotelli. I'm from South San Francisco. And good evening, everybody. In 2014, I was on a quest to have my failing retrofitted windows and doors by the airport corrected. That repair fund materialized, the paperwork was completed, but for some strange reason, my retrofit has been delayed until sometime next year. I am so disappointed and so very angry that those planes continue to test my patience, my sanity, and my home, and I feel like I'm being mocked by this airport. Why all the bullshit, including these fly quiet meetings? We, the public, are invited to come and participate, but yet never really get a chance to voice our opinions. And if we do voice, we are told not to expect any solutions. But in the meantime, those monster airplanes continue to fly over our heads, making so much noise and dumping tons of exhaust pollution on us that we are literally being trapped in our homes and still losing valuable sleep at night. You guys can all kiss my butt. Merry Christmas.
Okey-doke. Ashley, and then Rebecca Ward.
My name's Ashley Hathaway. This is the first time I've ever been to one of these meetings. I attended the ground noise meeting a couple weeks ago, or a few weeks ago. This is very interesting to me. I live in San Francisco. I live in a neighborhood called Glen Park, and I bought my house there with my husband in 2005. It was a very quiet neighborhood, and that was one of the reasons why we selected that neighborhood. And we've been happy there. But over the last several years, I won't even put a number on it, but it's several years, the jet noise over Glen Park has been unbearable. And we've been really sort of taken aback by how this happened. Again, it used to be a very quiet neighborhood, and you know, I have been stirring about what to do, what I can do as a person, a homeowner in San Francisco who once lived in a quiet neighborhood, what I can do about this. And so over the course of the years, I figured out finally that there's people like you that care about this issue, and I finally figured out that there's a group like this, and here I am. But I have to say, I am equally frustrated, I'm sure, as many of these people on this side of the room are. And I don't know what to do, because the first thing I hear in the morning is jet noise. I get woken up in the middle of the night, 2, 3, 4 a.m. from jet noise. I can't spend time in my backyard because of the jet noise. I mean, it's totally, it's like surreal. It's like, I feel like we are in a war zone. And it never used to be like this. And I have many neighbors around me that feel the same way. So anyway, I'm sure I'll be at another meeting, and I will have maybe something more prepared to say. But again, I appreciate everyone that's here, and I guess onward. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. So Rebecca Ward, and then Liz Lopez.
Hopefully this is still on. I was here 2 meetings ago, and I requested that Palo Alto be included on the SFO Roundtable. I talked about the fact that we have severe concentration of jet noise. I sent a letter to San Francisco members who are not here, and I'm requesting that you actually do include us on the roundtable. I did also send a letter to you, Chairperson Lewis, to correct the record about what's required. It only requires a 2/3 vote to actually include Palo Alto on the roundtable. Not everybody has to vote for that, and I guess I would have to question why it is that you wouldn't include us. We're right over the border. We have 9,000 tracks that go over us a month, 9,000. And I have audio of what that sounds like, because we talk about it, but if you actually heard what it sounds like, and it's relentless. It's less than every minute at this point, and nothing is being done by the airport. Even though there is an airport noise abatement office, they've done nothing for Palo Alto. I think it's time to include the city. The other thing I would say that everybody should be aware of is that they are redoing the BSR track, and when you take a look at what they're doing there, that's probably going to impact you guys, and it clearly is going to impact Palo Alto. Well, the airport wrote to me and said that they were going to advocate for much lower energy, less air brakes. None of that is showing up in the minutes from that actual meeting on the 4th and the 5th, because I did a FOIA request and I got it. And so in fact, what they intend to do is actually make the situation worse, and it probably will impact you. And I think it would be beneficial for everybody on this roundtable to actually have educated people who care about this on the roundtable, advocating not just for ourselves, but it also benefits you. It doesn't benefit anybody to leave Palo Alto and East Palo Alto. By the way, they go through East Palo Alto at like 3,000 feet. So it's time to actually make a reasonable change and include us in the roundtable.
Thank you. Liz Lopez, and then Mark Stuhl.
My name is Liz Lopez. I'm from District 10 in San Francisco, Visitation Valley. I wanted to thank Mr. McCaffrey for coming today. Really appreciate it. Yeah, we've been missing representation on this panel for a long time, so it means a lot. My neighborhood, Visitation Valley, it was once known, I think, as Forgotten Valley, and now people have dubbed it Jet Noise Valley. We used to be like a very just little quiet neighborhood that people didn't even know what Visitation, where it was, you know, who lived in San Francisco. They didn't even know. And it's just been inundated with hundreds of flights per day, and it has gotten worse. Even at like 1, 2 in the morning, when there might not be a whole lot of traffic elsewhere, they're still coming over our house, international flights at 2,700 feet in altitude, just making tremendous noise over our homes. And so that's it. I just wanted to get up and represent my city. Thank you.
Mark?
Yes, I wanted to make a couple comments on the PBN full working group meeting minutes that are now relatively available. First, we shouldn't have to have a FOIA to find out what's going on. Second, we repeatedly complained about Surfer having overspeed and over-energy problems at Eddy near Los Altos, resulting in heavy use of noisy drag devices and speed brakes. This showed up in the noise monitoring. Now the Surfer meeting notes make clear that pilots too are reporting speed issues on Surfer. Someone, presumably FAA, then states in the minutes that fixing this major contributor to unnecessary noise is not part of this project. And then someone else in the meeting says, we offered to do community noise monitoring, but the communities would not cooperate. Now, Bert's at these meetings, and maybe he can explain some of these things, because it'd be good to understand how the new BSR is supposed to be quieter if this group does not plan to deal with known overspeed problems. In fact, the participants were very concerned that it's oversteep, which always pushes noise to the end of the procedure where planes have no choice but to use surfaces and brakes to slow down quickly. As the ATC representative noted in the minutes, everything we do that shortens the route is going to increase the descent gradient, and it looks a little bit too steep. And a little bit too steep means a lot too noisy, which means over the peninsula. And I cannot help but ask which community isn't cooperating with monitoring. This doesn't sound right, so it'd be good to know who said it and what it's based on. Third, it looks like the airlines are pushing to make bricks an R&P procedure for significant operational advantage. Southwest proposed a charted R&P for bricks a long time ago. It's in the Roundtable archives. That's going to create a concentrated rail for people in South San Jose. And they will have good reason to ask who caused it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So that's all of the speaker cards that I have for our public comment period. I do want to say that all of your comments are well received and appreciated, and we hear them. I know that Director Ivar Sataro of the airport, he takes notes, and we circle back and we'll bring those issues up at a next meeting, a technical working group meeting, or the next roundtable meeting. So thank you for all of your comments and being here tonight to express that.
Oh, yeah.
The next, moving on to our consent agenda, it's items number 3 and 4. Are there any members of the roundtable body that would like to pull an item from the consent calendar? Any questions?
A couple of edits have been presented to me for the minutes, so whatever motion's made, it'll be approved as amended.
Okay, thank you. Any member of the public have any comments or questions about the consent agenda? Not, I'll bring it back. May I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second? Second. Do we have a,
One moment, please.
Yes.
I wanted to go back to the minutes, excuse me for interrupting. Just a correction on page 15.
Yes.
It has Ann Snyder for the city of Menlo Park.
Oh, you
Yeah,
already,
that-
I'm sorry.
that's okay, Celia.
That was one of the corrections
That was
presented.
one of the questions.
Thank you.
So we have a motion, a second. Any questions, discussions? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Our consent agenda has been passed. Our regular agenda is item number 5, SFO updates. Ivar Sataro, Airport Director. Ivar?
Sure. And something I try to do is check back on things that were brought up last time. And there were a couple items from my notes. One was a gentleman had asked about southerly takeoffs, opposite direction operations, so we could launch aircraft off the 10s instead of the 28s. And just to close the loop on that, that was determined unsafe in the 80s. This goes back to 1983, and it was discontinued. And as everyone probably knows, if we went back to that, that would be a noise shifting move as well. So we certainly don't see that ever coming back as a real option. And last time there was also a lot of discussion on GBAS and a lot of technical discussions on GBAS and some very knowledgeable people in Palo Alto about GBAS. And it's important that as we develop GBAS further, that there's full engagement and transparency in that process. And I can't respond directly because you folks know the technical details to a very granular level, and I think it's just important. I guess my comment is we need to have a process that engages the community to a level that there's that assuredness that, one, we're not shifting noise because we've made that commitment, and two, that we're looking at options and engaging the community on things that would benefit the community. So I think that's how I respond. I think Mary Jo, you and Mark were most outspoken about it, and that's my commitment on GBAS. To further update GBAS, it's been a difficult negotiations. Honeywell is the provider of this system, and very difficult to get to a contract with them, and other airports are experiencing this as well. Seattle is trying to also negotiate a GBAS contract with Honeywell, and they're just being very difficult on the boilerplate provisions on liability. And so we are joining forces with other airports to try to influence this and get to a deal with Honeywell on the GBAS system. Regarding the infrastructure needs, we're proceeding with the contract. We have about a $10 million investment that the airport's making in GBAS. So we are proceeding with the design of the hard infrastructure that we need to do, and we're proceeding with trying to still get a contract with Honeywell to supply the system, the GBAS system. Second chance and replacement noise insulation program, quick update. I think, do we have a slide on that, Bert? Or I'll just read the numbers if we don't. That's fine. Excuse me. So on the replacement program, we've received a total of 797 applications. 586 are within the noise exposure area, and we visited 379. And we've tested 39, so we're making progress. Do we have any Bert, any construction starting soon on any of the houses, or?
There are some in progress. I'll have to talk to Gerardo for good numbers.
Okay, okay. I believe there is some construction starting, or there's some site pre-construction by the contractor on some of the.
I don't think it's from this second chance and the other. I think it's from the other existing homes.
The FAA. Okay, okay. And then on the second chance program, we have 531 applications. We have 155 of those within the noise exposure area, and 178 have been visited, and 60 of those homes have been tested. And so that's the process and the steps we go through to determine eligibility and then assign them a place in our pre-construction order for visiting by the contractor and preparing design drawings and that kind of thing. So next item, passenger traffic. SFO is flat year over year. We're seeing still really strong international growth, about 7% international. Domestic is down about 3%. So overall, that is flat in terms of a year over year growth at SFO in terms of passengers. We've seen service from Norwegian Air now at SFO. Norwegian moved operations from Oakland over to San Francisco to flights to Gatwick, and they are also flying Paris and Barcelona. Thanks, Anthony. Hong Kong Airlines terminated service in October at SFO with their financial difficulties, and Qantas flew their last 747 out of SFO, and they'll be replacing that aircraft with a 787 moving forward. Night hush. We continue to work with the FAA on the night hush initiative, and we need to be clear about this. This isn't proceeding into the design of any changes that are necessary. It's already a charted procedure. It's proceeding with the environmental impacts of further utilization of the procedure. Right now, it's pretty sparsely utilized. Is there opportunity to use it more? And so there is, I think, the desire to move forward and do all of the analysis to see if there's further impacts or if there's noise shifting to the communities. And so I think we will have consensus shortly that, yes, we should proceed with studying this further. And we know there's concerns, particularly around the north end of San Francisco and potentially over in Marin and some areas that are concerned about shifting of noise. And as we've been very clear on, that is one of our key tenets is not to shift noise with any of these, implementing any of these items. So we're making progress, and we're engaging with the airlines and with their support as well, garnering their support as well, and the FAA. Let's see, our new noise monitoring system, permanent noise monitoring terminals have been completed. We're starting on the Burlingame Noise Monitor, Site 11. That is, I think the community's agreed to a nearby relocation based on the ground-based noise subcommittee's work and evaluation. System software upgraded in mid-November, and we're now training staff on the new software and then working towards all the site acceptance that has to happen. So that is my report.
Thank you, Ivar. Does any member of the roundtable wish to have a question? We have Redwood City, and then Ann, and then Cecilia.
Thank you.
Janet.
So I apologize if I ask a question that is not relevant to what you said, but going back to what you said about the passenger traffic and the fact that it's considered flat growth, is that passenger count or, I'm going to say, airplane count? So we're hearing that there's more noise from planes, but the passengers are down. Does that mean there's less flights that are flying, or?
It's passengers.
So it's strictly passengers we're talking about. We're not talking about then the planes that are.
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct. Well, the passengers correlate to the planes, but domestic aircraft are smaller than
Correct.
international aircraft.
Correct, and international was up.
And international is up, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just a second, before we take, I just want to welcome Foster City member Sanjay Gihani, who came, and Terry O'Connell from Brisbane. So our quorum continues to grow. Anne.
My question's along the same lines. When we get the reported out of number of airplane growth or reduction, is it possible to include those that take off during day, evening, and night? Because if we are, and I know that there's some midnight flights that go to DC, but if we are changing flights that leave during the day and we're getting more international flights, which I apologize, I've been on 3 of those in the last 6 months, leaving after midnight. So those are the ones that might most be causing the most harm. So if we could get that data of, is it the growth in the night or growth during the day?
Yeah, we can.
And not today,
yeah.
but, in the
Understood. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Cecilia, Menlo Park.
Thank you. My question is, the update you just gave on the second chance and the replacement noise, is any of that on your website? Because I didn't catch all the information.
Yes, and we do have don't we have a specific website, dedicated website? Good.
Yeah.
Like SFO.com, and you will look through the residential sound insulation program.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other members have questions? Diane.
A quick question. Once we quantify how many planes may be increasing at night, is there a way to change that? And we got people here that are upset about things happening at night. So once we get that data, how do we go about maybe having an effect on that data, if at all?
And that's the rub of all of the conversations that are happening with in this forum is
That's
authority over flights. Airport has zero authority over air traffic, over flights that we have zero authority over flights choosing to come into San Francisco, into SFO. We have zero. That is what the act is, the Noise and Capacity Act of 1990. So that all resides within federal authority.
For modernization dollars, they struck.
But say, for example, when Norwegian now doesn't go out of Oakland, comes out of here, who made that decision?
Norwegian.
Norwegian makes
We
that
have no
decision.
authority over any of those decisions.
So they apply to the FAA, and the FAA says you will now accept them at this hour?
They can pay for it.
They are already an authorized flight, so they choose to fly into SFO and make that change.
Who determines the hour, though?
The airline schedule.
Everybody but here, so here we are.
Just one second, yes.
But I recall previous reports, Director, that there is an encouragement program to suggest to airlines that they try to fly out at a particular time. Some of this, like my flight to Taiwan, they got in exactly at 6 a.m. We left at 12:07. So, maybe we can keep working. We could have gotten into Taiwan at 8. No, that would make it worse. Anyway,
We
let's
are,
start.
yeah,
I know
well,
you've talked about it.
yeah, sure. We are protective of the evening hours. We do not encourage any type of activity in the evening hours. We look for slots during the day where there's available space, not try to encourage the evening hours. We still don't have authority over that, but we guide them away from that to the extent that we can.
Okay, so I do have some speaker cards on this topic, Ivar. Charlie, you have 2 minutes.
Charlie Wambeck from the Excelsior District in San Francisco. Ivar, I have a lot of respect for you, but it makes me furious every time you say, we cannot shift noise. Why the heck do you think we're all sitting here, okay? The noise has already been shifted, all right? I've been living in my house for over 52 years. I never heard an airplane hardly ever come over my house until 2015. The noise has shifted. Now I'm out in my backyard. I hear airplanes coming over every 30 seconds. They're coming in every different direction. I go over to Visitation Valley. They're coming overhead there. You know, Brisbane. All these people here have airplanes coming right over their homes. And with GPS, it's just a stream going the same darn place all the time. And now you've shifted to not only takeoffs for San Francisco, but landings. Passenger traffic, you know, as far as I'm concerned, you know, we ought to be listening to Greta Thunberg and, you know, stop flying so much. It's a shame. If we didn't have such lily-livered Congress people, we would change the 1990 law. And when you mentioned the Brown Act, I looked it up, 1953. You know, we're back in the Stone Ages. All right? You know, we need to get doing with what's happening in the modern world here. You know, you're just really, and as far as environmental impact, we had the FAA here last year saying, last 2 months ago saying, oh, just a little bit here, a little bit of dropping here, a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here. Really, the pollution from jets is really insignificant. It's only a little tiny bit. It's only a little tiny bit. It's only a little tiny bit.
Thank you, Charlie.
And a little tiny bit adds up.
So the next speaker is Carolyn Kincaid from San Francisco, and then Liz Lopez from San Francisco. Carolyn?
Hi. So I first started coming here 2 years ago in the fall of 2017. I also live in the Excelsior District in San Francisco, and the shift happened over my house 2 years ago. So I echo what Charlie says. There's definitely shifting that's going on. And really what I wanted to talk to was, I would love there to be an emphasis on there being a night procedure for these stick departures, because they are just so disturbing. I mean, I'm getting these planes to Mexico over my house 1 a.m., and they're at like 3,000 feet, and I look, and there's barely any other activity in the bay at that point. And I'm having a hard time understanding why it's so difficult for the FAA to figure out an alternative to sending these planes over my house. And you talk about not shifting noise to Marin or the northern part of San Francisco where the planes would go over the water. These planes are going directly over our homes at very low altitudes. And if you were to fly them up the bay and actually gain altitude and not fly them over people's homes, I think that would be a whole hell of a lot better than what's happening right now.
Thank you. Liz Lopez, and then Mary Jo Fremont.
I guess my issue also, because I'm from San Francisco, Visitation Valley, which is near the Excelsior District, we get the same planes and the same streams. These night hush meetings, I think there have been several, and from my understanding, no member of the public has been allowed to attend. Does that sound right?
The meetings have been with the FAA, yeah.
So they've been with the FAA, okay. So is there at any point going to be meetings where the public is allowed to attend so that we have an opportunity to comment, to hear what the conversation is, and then people,
There will
you
be
know.
public involvement, yeah.
Okay, and is that only after the environmental review happens?
I am not sure about that. The FAA will be leading that exercise, and we'll be following their procedures for review of the traces.
Okay, and I just also want to echo the comments of shifting, like the shifting in San Francisco took place in 2015 as well as in 2016 and also late 2017. Like this shifting has been ongoing, so it wasn't directly just after NextGen. There's been continual shifting over San Francisco areas which were previously quiet. So I just want to make that apparent that this idea of not shifting noise, it just seems ludicrous, and that's why you're getting these comments.
I want to make sure there's clarity on what this is, and this is around the discussion of night hush, which is intended to address the stick departures and help those overflights. And when I say not shifting, I get it. You know, I'm with the airport, I'm not with the FAA. I get the impact Metroplex has had. My point around not shifting is not to advocate for a change post-Metroplex, because I didn't have anything to do with, none of you had anything to do with Metroplex. My point is we won't advocate for a change that shifts noise to another community post-Metroplex, but I completely empathize with the change pre-Metroplex to post-Metroplex. So I want to make sure I feel, I know what you're suffering through.
So Mary Jo Fremont, Palo Alto, and then Yvonne McHugh from Point Richmond.
I would like to follow up on the little update that Ivar just gave on the noise monitors. So I live in Palo Alto, like several other residents. Per San Francisco monitoring, which was done a year or so ago, we were tracking at 269 SFO arrivals per day. 269, these are not my data, they are SFO noise monitor. We don't have a noise monitor, a permanent noise monitor, because we are in Santa Clara County. As best the best of my knowledge, the San Francisco noise monitors are not, I don't understand why they're exclusively in San Mateo and San Francisco counties. We live across the border. We get about 60%, in Palo Alto, we get about 60% of the SFO arrivals, day in and day out, 24 hours a day. I get 2 hours of sleep maybe every single night. And seriously, I don't understand why we're not getting a permanent noise monitor. We cannot minimize noise if we don't measure it. And right now, there are 29 permanent noise monitors established in San Mateo and San Francisco counties. Some of them don't capture the noise. The noise monitors need to be where the noise is. And many of the noise monitors today do not capture the noise impact. And that's true in San Francisco, that's true in some San Mateo County cities. So I'd like to understand the plan on how San Francisco is going to deploy its permanent noise monitors across all the counties that are affected by San Francisco departures and arrivals. Thank you.
Yvonne?
I wanted to take the opportunity to respond to something one of the speakers said, and it was actually the point of my talk was that I gave this handout. This shows, well, it's hard to, this shows Oakland, San Francisco airports. The flights come up the bay on the water, but then when they get to, they pass night, and then they head toward Rebus, which is on the land, and that's right behind us. So they don't continue flying up the bay on the water. They actually suddenly go over Rebus, which is on the land, and that's where we're getting all of our impact. There is another waypoint that is on the water, and that's what we're asking. Can you just continue up the bay and have all those flights going over the water? This is, well, none of you can read this, but the red circle is within 1 mile radius of our residence, and you can see that is Rebus, that's the waypoint. that the planes are heading for, both Oakland arrivals and San Francisco and Oakland departures. This WAGNA, which is over the water, is what we're asking that things be shifted to. Even though we're far away from both airports, we're having a tremendous impact from the flights.
All right. We're closing public comments on this item and going on to our next agenda item, number 6. It's a information update from Burke Ganong on noise tracker new website overview. So Bert, he's our noise abatement manager at San Francisco Airport.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, my capable assistant, Jonathan Wilson from Brule & Care, who's our system provider, dials into our system so we can present this to you and over the web as well. We will be going ahead with the presentation. I'll cap it by saying that we took all of the input we received from our previous flight tracking website, and we implemented, I think, every bit of what everybody asked for. So I think we shot high and achieved. I'm hoping that we were able to do that and we're able to satisfy everybody. So what you're looking at here is a Brule & Care product called WebTrack. Let's see. I'm not being picked up by our laptop. All right, well, yeah. Please. Yes. No, plug it in. Thank you. All right.
It's beautiful.
All right, so it just vibrated and said it's online. Let's see if we can actually get to do something with it here. Oh, it's installing. Okay, so before we go further, the colors of the flights, you'll see red and green. They indicate SFO operations. In the left column there, you're going to see a quick start guide, says arrivals and departures. You can actually drill down further with that. You can look into it and see what type of aircraft it is, which airport. So we color-coded them by airport, so it makes it easier to see. Let's see, there we go. So here's Oakland's colors. We're looking at SFO flight overhead. We have an Oakland arrival, and there's not a gray one out there, but that would be the other color. San Jose's another one. Wanted to also point out our messaging here. So let's start with the far right. We have the weather. We don't just tell you what the current weather is. We have the ability to bring in the Doppler radar, so you can see what goes on, maybe figure out why airplanes are not flying exactly where they were yesterday. So that might be your air traffic controller skirting a weather front, and that's an important thing for a pilot to do. It's not exactly safe. If you can avoid them, please do. So we brought that in. Let's go ahead and move beyond that one, Jonathan. We're going to jump on to the next one. So we have different layers here. You can bring up the noise contours just by clicking them on and off. The plus sign opens them up. And when you open them up, let's try to change to a normal dot. There we go. So if you click them on, you hit the plus sign, it will then open it up. You can, different levels of contours that you can look at. So you can turn them on and off selectively there. So you have the 75, the 70, and the 65, if you want to look at those yourselves. The noise monitors obviously are currently running all the way up and down the peninsula that we have them. The green colors are cooler. The more towards red you get are the hotter colors. And they're the ones that give you the information on louder noise events. And then 2, they pulse up a little bit, if I remember right. So we get a little bit larger. As you can see right here in Foster City, we have a little bit larger than here in San Mateo. And that's due to the fact that there's a noise event going on. We want to drag your attention to it. As we look at the other items we have here, we had an information display. I believe Jonathan cruised by that one real fast. Here we go. Right now it says system testing. We're testing our online noise report feature, which we activated this afternoon with Jonathan in the office so that we could go ahead and display it tonight. We're going to do a hard launch on this for the 16th. We'll go ahead and do a noise press release for it and everything else. But we'll just pop that open here real quick if you, well, actually, no, we'll do that last. Sorry, Jonathan. Let me stay with the order here. We were going to go to the community feature. So under community feature here, we have a bunch of different pre-programmed areas. You can just go to one. Let's go to Millbrae, Jonathan. Select that, click that. It'll recenter the map automatically on Millbrae. So if you would like to focus on your city, your community, we have set up the ability to quickly go there and do that for you. If you would also like to refocus, like Jonathan just did, hit that button there, which is the refresh, goes back to where it was, resets the map. Addresses. So if you want to do an address lookup, you could plug in an address here. Another way to do it is to go ahead and just put a locate on map. It'll give you an icon that you can drag around, click. You can even drag that one around too and select where you'd like to say, I live here, or I'd like to look at there and explore more. And the reason I say not just to live here, but look there, is for somebody who would like to perhaps move into a given area. They can actually choose where to place the home, see what it looks like for them. So we have that. And then another feature that was our latest and greatest as of today is we added in the aircraft reporting feature. So you can click on an aircraft like he has there. It shows the information box there on the aircraft. You go to this window, the bubble, which you just did, and it will bring up the information window here where it's already been pre-populated with your information on the flight. And the date, you can adjust the time a little bit if you want. Say it went past your home a little bit, you can bring it back a few moments. You can then give us some information about the flight in these 2 boxes here. And then go ahead and launch it. It goes straight into our system. So we've automated a lot of the issues that folks were telling us that they wanted and made it more of a usable system. And for those of you diehards who really like our old system, up here at the very top under Flight 3D, we have the old Volans, so you can go back if you're a retro type person.
Thank you, Bert.
Yes, ma'am.
Any questions for Bert? Anyone have any questions or comments for Bert? Harry? Yes.
Push up. What's the web address?
Address is the same as it's always been, flyquietsfo.com. And then we have Track the Flights, or 3D Flight Tracker, I forget.
Ann Schneider?
The monitoring devices, is it A-weighted or C-weighted?
A-weighted, of course.
A-weighted. Is there an opportunity to add C-weighting in the future?
I don't know. We'll have to talk with our vendor about doing something like that because it would definitely be progressive and it would definitely be a big change. Okay. We probably could get some sort of alternate reporting off to the side or something.
Okay. And this is basically then all airplanes in flight, so 5 feet above ground. It wouldn't necessarily capture the run-ups or any APU use at terminals?
You would be surprised. It does capture some of that, yes, because it's live and it's bouncing tape. Okay. We're not sitting there recording the slow A-weighted for the CNEO contours. We're looking at just raw noise.
Okay. What I get from reading Nextdoor, which is going to include Millbrae, Burlingame, Hillsborough, San Bruno, and Pacifica is the way our Nextdoor works. There's always a lot of confusion on some of the low-frequency noise getting confused with run-ups. Is there a way that, because run-ups are typically scheduled, aren't they, that we can chart out run-ups?
To a point. We like to ask the carriers let us know, particularly late night, when they're going to do them. There are times, too, where they complete the repair, they take it over and test run it.
Okay. And for if anybody's watching at home, Bert has actually asked those of us dealing now with ground-based noise to be reporting more often. So I'm getting more questions about how to report. So using your airplane identifier, so looking at that little red one that's landing
Yes.
28 or landing on 28, a lot of the noise we hear, you don't know the airplane. It's not actually flying over the house. We have the flying over the house, but
True.
the ones that aren't. What's the best way to record that or find?
So under the Investigate tab, you can pop that. It will then come up with the window that you saw a moment ago, and you can then populate it with whatever you've heard.
Great.
And so if you go down to the disturbance type, we have auxiliary power unit, if you believe it's that, or ground-based noise.
Thank you.
We listened.
Okay. All right. No other comments from our roundtable members. I do have some speaker cards on this. First, it's Rebecca from Palo Alto, and then Mark Schul from Palo Alto.
Is it
Madam Chair?
possible to kind of pan that down to Palo Alto?
Madam
Yeah.
Chair. I said-
Okay, yes. Rebecca,
Yeah.
can I ask you just wait one second, because our council member from Foster City, Sanjay,
yeah.
has a comment.
No, no.
Just a
No, go
quick
ahead.
one.
No, go ahead.
So do we have an app as well, or is it just going to be website driven? So if you're on our cell phones, is there an app that we could download as well?
You can use this via the cell phones. Now, as far as a specific app for doing the complaint entry, right now the most efficient one is stopjetnoise.net. And 99% of our traffic goes through there. It is not our app. It was developed by a member of the community down in Santa Cruz Hills.
Yeah, it was.
We are connecting it right now through an API. That one, I think we'll have connected by the 16th. So as far as the rest of it, everything else, yes, we're working for the 16th. Yes, sir.
So I just had a quick question. I see the last monitor down there in Redwood City. I think Marie Jo mentioned the fact that there's nothing down in Palo Alto. I do have the noise report that she mentioned that has over 270 planes on it. You can see right there that little red one's going over it. I think when you clicked on it, it was at 4,200 feet, but there's no noise monitor anywhere near that to actually capture the impact of that particular plane. And while you were showing that, there were numerous planes. There was the typical rail going over, but none of that noise is getting captured, not even at Menlo Park, which is actually a roundtable member.
Yes.
And you can see now that guy's going into East Palo Alto. If he was at 4,200 over Palo Alto, what is he at over East Palo Alto, like, what, 3,000? I mean, and none of that noise is getting captured at all.
This is Bodega West.
Is that because we're not roundtable members? Why isn't there a noise monitor there? There was supposed to be one in Menlo Park, and that never happened.
Right. The Menlo Park one we were looking at in early 2000s. And in the end, when we had to downsize the system at the time due to 9/11, they elected not to do it. Okay.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Rebecca.
Well, we told them we would prefer not to, but they agreed with us that they would not.
Okay,
So
Mark,
the other item
please,
too,
please.
with noise monitors,
please. Okay, you're going to have.
with noise monitors is that they're to validate a noise contour. And if you look, can you turn on the contours for a moment, Jonathan?
Yeah. They don't count the contours way over here.
Thank you. So if you look at the ones out here, they did the area behind the area of the airport of the ones. We had one here in Foster City. This is a newer one here in San Mateo. It was a request at the same time, 2000s. And then we have these cities out the gap, and they're validating there. And then these noise monitors here covered the shoreline departures that turn right off of 2/8 and the, at the time, port departures that would turn left. And that was the genesis for noise monitors. It's not to say noise levels went up or down so much as to validate a noise contour, which is used for insulation mitigation programs.
Thank you, Bert. I do have one more speaker card from the public. Mark Schul from Palo Alto.
But it would still be nice to know what the noise is so you can compare.
Yeah, I think it would be worth looking at what the history of the noise monitors is, because I have all that data, because I have all the records of all the meetings of this roundtable since 1981. And pretty much it is true that at the airport around the CNL zone, those are required by Title 21. The rest of them were given using essentially federal funds determined by the airport, so it's not like airport funds, it's AIP funds, and given because they were members. Not because there was a need, not because there was a plan, but because they were members. And there's a whole story about why that happened and why Menlo Park didn't get one. But going to this, what you just described, Bert, is all of the good reasons why you have departure monitors, except that, what about the arrival monitors when this is the arrival path? It goes here. It doesn't go here. It doesn't go here. It doesn't go here. The arrival path is almost 100% over the bay or over Santa Clara County, and there are no monitors. So you're not capturing any of it. And the other thing I question is, who owns the bulk data here so we can do analysis? Is it publicly available, or does B&L or B&K own it? Okay, and will that be made available by an API? How long will you keep it?
We're back to 99 on record.
Back to 99, okay. Well, I mean, because, you know, people want to do analysis as to what's going on, what the shifts are, et cetera. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So I guess Mary Jo Fremont, Palo Alto, and then I'm closing the public comment on this.
I just decided to make a comment because someone brought up this slide. So I looked at this, in fact, today, and it's trying to show the arrival routes. And I think it's great, but I am very, very familiar with the arrival routes, and I just would like for the record to be corrected, so I think I'll talk to Bert probably, because it doesn't really correctly reflect. I'm just going to pick on the one I like the most. Surfer, it just goes straight here. It doesn't go here. That's a perception problem, maybe, so I'd like this to be corrected and be happy to share the data with you, because what I can tell you is these three routes here, they overlap right here. Right here. Right. It's not, there's one place in the Bay Area where there are three arrival routes and they all merge over Palo Alto. And I'm in Palo Alto and I've lived in my house for 23 years. And I was fine until 2015. So I echo completely all these people. My life completely changed from day one to day two. It was in March 2015. And I would dare to have any city to tell me that they get 300 planes per day at about 4,000 feet, almost 22 hours a day. So I'll talk to you, Bert, offline, if we can correct the record on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Jo. And I have another comment from Ann Schneider.
If you went back to that map, would, for the record, say that approximately 15% of the flights out of SFO land over Millbrae or take off over Millbrae and portions of Burlingame. So, you know, just so that everybody understands that 15%, that's somewhat dependent on the weather, take off directly. So that same blue line, and this will come back when we talk about contours, should be reflecting the 15%. The problem is that the data is averaged over a 24-hour and 365-day range. And so it's never as perfect as it should be, but for the record, 15% over Millbrae.
Okay. Bert?
I agree that these images of the tracks are not exact. I mean, they're meant to show where they generally go. And they aren't that wide, they aren't that narrow. I mean, they're not perfect. But it's a good way to see, oh, I want to look at the surfer. Okay. Can you go down and show how we would break that out for the surfer, if you don't mind, Jonathan? Thank you. So you just pull up a right, turn off departures, be easier to see. And so you can get very specific on it and look at where the surfer is. So it's a generality, and yes, I will slide it over to the left a little bit if you don't mind.
Bert, thank you so much. This was a lot of work, and this is an exciting upgrade, and I think it's going to be a useful tool for a lot of us to be able to track and understand what's happening above our heads. Thank you again. We'll go on to our next item. Unless, did you have a comment on this, Cecilia?
I do. I have a question.
Question for Bert?
Yes, please.
Don't sit down yet, hon.
Bert, I have a question. Thank you.
Menlo Park.
What are the number of monitors that are on the screen right now? Is it the 29?
We have 29 noise monitoring sites within the San Mateo and San Francisco counties. We are in process of relocating one, number 11 in Burlingame. Right now, it was a land swap that happened right as we were getting into this, so we had to bid that one. Quite expensive, actually, we're finding out. And the other one is 28, Redwood City. The school is going to demolish the area where that site is too, right after we upgraded it. So.
Is it possible to add more, or are we out of funds to?
It's not part of this contract. It would be a separate item altogether. We're finding it's going to be about $40,000 plus the cost of the monitor and any trenching we need to do for power or phone lines.
Just to clarify, that's for a permanent installation.
For a permanent, yes.
We have 8 portable units,
Yes, ma'am.
which are as effective as a permanent, and we will be discussing that at later on in the agenda. Noise monitors, which can be deployed. And how many portables have we deployed so far on this? None, right? None of those 8.
We're talking about doing one next week for the Site 11.
Oh.
When we take it offline, we'll have a portable running for it.
Okay.
We do have currently 4 portables that we've been running all the way up till now. The report that you have in your packet from Brisbane is run off of 2 of those.
Woodside and...
In Woodside, Portola Valley, yes. We've been doing it for years.
Right.
The brand new monitors that we have from Brulin Care come in these beautiful bright yellow cases that latest and greatest technology. We will have the ability for the public to be able to log in and watch what's going on in their backyard on a portable. So if a city would like to post on the web and say, hey, we have this portable noise monitor operating in city center, anybody interested, here's the web address. So you can see what goes on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, we're going to move on to item number 7, a legislative update from Congresswoman Spears' office. We have Representative Kathleen Wentworth, who's a familiar face with us. She's senior advisor from the Congresswoman's office. And with her is Brian Perkins, who's also one of Congresswoman Spears' legislative aides. They're going to give us an update on legislation, congressional legislation, if I can say that correctly.
Hello, everybody. We decided that this would be a good opportunity for us to update you on some pending legislation. You folks have been speaking to the Roundtable and to the community for some time now. And believe it or not, there's been a lot of people listening. One of them is my boss, Congresswoman Jackie Spear, and she, in conjunction with her 2 colleagues, Representative Eshoo and Representative Panetta down from Santa Cruz area, are co-sponsoring legislation, and Congresswoman Spear has introduced 8 pieces of legislation that deal with airport noise in one way or another. And these, right there's perfect. These bills these have been introduced at the start of the process. And these bills deal directly with a number of different aspects of noise impact. One is just the direct amelioration of noise underneath the flight paths, such as insulation. Others deal with prevention of airport noise below flight paths, such as maybe a night-south departure. The legislation also deals with FAA processes that are used in the creation and modification of new flight paths, and also deals with FAA engagement with public officials and the community. And lastly, although far from least, is a reprioritization of the management of airspace. So we'll go through these there's 8 of them. We won't read you the bills, so don't worry about that. But we will give you an overview of what each bill does, and there's going to be quite a bit of more information available on going forward. Brian will start us off.
What Kathleen didn't say is that if we read you the bills, you would not have a sleep problem tonight, as you'd start here. The first bill, as you may know, generally speaking in the United States, curfews at airports are not permitted under federal law. So this first bill would abolish that statute and instead substitute or reenact the right of an airport to establish a curfew. This bill would say that a curfew could be created by an airport between the hours of 10 o'clock at night to 7 o'clock in the morning or any period during that time. And it would establish the right of the airport to establish penalties and to do the other sorts of things that attend a curfew, such as exists in other parts of the globe. So that's the first bill. We're calling that the REST Act. The second bill is a bill related to noise impacts on communities and the ability of residents to reasonably expect that there will be some sort of noise insulation efforts made within their communities. So the bill defines a noise-impacted community, and it's different than the existing standard. As you know, Bert was showing you the contours and so forth. One of the difficulties with the contours is, as was mentioned, these are averages over the course of a year. Human beings don't respond to averages over the course of the year. They respond to jarring events at the moment. And so this bill takes account of that by saying that a noise event is anything that is 75 decibels on the A scale or greater, and that if there are 10 of those measurements in a community for 2 consecutive or non-consecutive months in the course of a year, that community becomes eligible then for insulation and all the other noise protection measures that we talk about typically. Kathleen? Oh, and it requires the airport to do 200 per year per community. It doesn't substitute, by the way, for the other program that already exists. It's just an additional program, and it's relative to SFO in particular.
As we have talked about in the past, the FAA creates and modifies flight plans in a vacuum to a great extent. And for the most part, few people in this room get to have access to those meetings. The Congresswoman has prepared a piece of legislation that would allow a roundtable technical representative to be present at every meeting during the process going forward, so that the community would have a direct advocate. And so this would go be for any of the PBN processes, either a new creation of a new flight path or a modified flight path. Well, you know, I should go back. We forgot to tell you to notice all the cute names we came up with. Yeah. We worked very hard on this. So make sure you look at that. So the Apprise Act is to all participating in process reaching informed solutions for everyone. So that's to allow a roundtable rep, technical rep, to sit on the PBN committees. The next one, oops, let's go forward, is the SH Act, which is Southbound Hush and Night Help Households. And this night hush thing has sort of been subjected to what everyone I talk to says is a somewhat unusual kind of process, and that is that it's not entered into for the formal processing PBN, but rather it's having some precondition meetings with stakeholders. Unfortunately, those stakeholders don't involve every stakeholder, just some select people. And so this legislation would require the FAA to follow the normal PBN processing with standard processing type meetings and use standard criteria for processing this proposed departures, rather than the current process that it's in now, the sort of ad hoc process that the FAA seems to have tacked on the front of this process. So we'll see where that goes. This one is the FAIR Act. Fairness in airspace includes residents. And this has the potential for making great changes within the FAA. This is the bill that would require, right now the FAA under federal law is mandated to control their airspace and the movement of airplanes through the airspace based on two criteria. One is safety, no question there, no discussion, always going to be first. And the second is efficiency. And there is no number three. So this bill would require the FAA to reprioritize their airspace so that safety, of course, would remain number one, but tying for second place would be efficiency, along with concerns dealing with noise and health impacts to residents and other environmental concerns.
I think earlier tonight you heard the response from someone saying basically that when a noise concern was raised, it was, not the FAA's job. Well, this would make it the FAA's job, just to be clear.
So this has great potential for changing the mission of the FAA, and in fact would change their mission statement as an additional add-on so that it's clear to everybody that their mission would now include sensitivity and response and consideration to issues other than efficiency.
By the way, this was Kathleen's idea. I thought it was a brilliant idea personally, and obviously the Congresswoman did too. Beyond that, what you're also maybe missing is that in the federal process, when you change the mission of the organization, you'll probably also change its scope of operations. That almost always means that they come back and ask for more money. And so that's the domino effect of changing this mission, is that ultimately this organization grows into one that actually can handle the responsibility of dealing with noise instead of not having the responsibility to begin with, and then of course not being budgeted for it, particularly on top of that.
Okay, and the next one is the RESPECT Act. Yes, I named that one.
Long ago.
And I actually tried to get them to put a little musical symbol in front of it, so, or the Aretha Act, but I no sense of humor. So this is, the RESPECT Act stands for Responsive Employees Support Productive, Educated Congressional Talk. And in a nutshell, what this does is require the FAA to respond to members of Congress when they ask questions about flights in their district or data in their district. And upon request from a member of Congress, the FAA will provide adequate notice and all that, will provide staff to come to congressional meetings or town halls or the similar kind of thing. You want to explain the background on that? Yeah, good.
The FAA had promised Congresswoman Spear a representative and then backed out.
Yeah, it was a change in circumstances. The next one we call the Notified Act. Notify officials to inform fully and impel educated decisions. And this is basically the FAA to be required to notify members of Congress, members of boards of supervisors, members of city councils, and roundtables, if anything is proposed that is changing the flight paths or instituting new flight paths within 5 miles of their jurisdiction.
Wow.
That's huge.
So that would be very helpful to all sorts of people to be notified. And it goes on to talk about not just we're having a new procedure, what is it, where is it, what are the altitudes, a substantive notification, not just pro forma. And back to
So with limited exception, it's almost impossible for residents to maintain a cause of action in court against an airport. And so what this bill would do would be to create that right of going to a state court against an airport for noise when that noise is actually low-frequency noise, so this is basically backblast, as we like to say. And the state of California, and I'll just use California as the example, if the state has established a program that identifies noise and identifies how to measure backblast noise, then the airport basically is held responsible under those standards, and the residents could go to court in the event those standards were violated. This is an unusual mixture in federal context. You don't normally rely upon state standards and grant through federal law the right for a state to establish such a thing. But right now there's a preemption. The federal government basically has taken away the right of residents. There's limited exceptions. So the Congresswoman feels that that ought to be a right. We all ought to have a right to go to court in the event that we can't otherwise get our concerns addressed. And I analogize this system to the one that we use for establishing speed limits within cities. There's no one speed limit across the state, but the state has a way to establish a speed limit, and then the speed limit for a particular road takes account of the circumstances, and there's engineering judgments that are made, and then at that point, that becomes the standard for a particular airport. So this is the package of 8, and so we don't want to take, you've got a long agenda tonight, we don't want to take up a lot of time, but if there are any quick questions, of course, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Sure. Well, I just want to say this seems like a little early Christmas present to us in lots of ways. I know this is just the beginning, but a lot of work has gone into this. And thank you, Kathleen and Brian, and certainly Congresswoman Spear for having the heart and the persistence to do something like this. This is really act of Congress, and that's how things get changed. Okay, so first I'm going to open it up to Roundtable to ask. Let's briefly ask, questions for them, and then I do have a couple of speaker cards.
My apologies. I just also need to point out it's also Congresswoman Eshoo and Congressman Panetta as well.
Yes.
They've been working very hard on this as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
And we have other co-sponsors as well from the Fly Quiet.
I'll start here. Do Ann Wingert, Portola, and then Diane? No? Oh, okay.
I just want to echo what Elizabeth said to me, and I've been doing this for a long time, as long as many of you in the audience, I think, and even longer. It's the most exciting legislative initiative I've seen by far. I mean, just starting with the REST Act, just frankly, for me, it was spectacular that you're attempting to get rid of the 1990 prohibition that we've all been struggling under.
Just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's absurd. So thank you for that. And I have one very large question that I'm sure you won't be able to answer fully, but in your opinion, just based on the size of this initiative, how long do you expect? I mean, if you have just a broad-based estimate of what you think it might be.
So we actually asked the Chief of Staff that question this afternoon, and what he said is the Congresswoman is going to ask for hearings on her bills. That's how you get progress. And even if the hearings don't occur immediately, this is the first step. You can never, ever get progress without putting something into writing and actually propounding it. So it's Congress. Unlike the state legislature, which, by the way, I worked in, we always guaranteed a hearing on every bill. Congress by no means does that. So it's a long effort, but she's going to ask for hearings.
Great, thank you.
Carol.
I just wanted to know if you had any copies of that presentation.
So that presentation is identical to what you have. It's just a slightly different format, but the wording's identical. And for the public, there are versions of this. We made up copies that are at the back table, or at least they were when we started this evening.
Ann? Snyder? Yes, did you? Did you have your hand up?
Well, I hadn't, but I will.
Come on.
Thank you.
It was Janet.
This is very exciting. Wait, now I'm confused. If I can get this electronically, Mr. Perkins, you're aware I wear other hats, so I'm happy to get this to the Sierra Club right away.
You can scan it.
Yeah, easier for me.
It's not yet on our
with things
website.
If I can get it electronically.
Yeah.
And I'll
Kathleen
start
can send
building
it
up
to you.
the support from the environmental community.
Yeah, and I have to apologize. We're redoing our website, so our website actually is like frozen in time at the moment, but the moment it becomes unfrozen and refreshed,
Okay.
then this will be part of it.
Janet?
Thank you. This is 8 times yes. Thank you so much. This was a lot of work. This is, and I love all the little names that you've added to it, because it actually, you know, it may sound funny, but it actually addresses everything we hear. Every aspect of the individual's lives that are impacted by this. This addresses that. And putting a little humor to it, it's
good.
okay.
Yeah.
Not okay when you're experiencing it, but thank you. And whatever we need to do to help you move forward. Thank you.
Pam and then Al.
Echoed everyone, thank you, because the health issues have been pretty severe when you talk to some people. And that I know that your office and Congresswoman Eshoo and them are really that. And for Palo Alto people and everyone in this room, that you came all the way here and to hear this is, hopefully this is a sign that, you know, your efforts are not going unwarranted or unnoticed. And that it's, even at a federal level, that they pay attention. So that's actually something that's very refreshing. And thank you, and happy Hanukkah, and as well. Thank you.
Yes.
Al?
Yes, a couple questions. First, I'd echo the comments made. This is great work, and we appreciate it very much. With respect to sponsors, have you reached out to other sponsors around the country? Because clearly this is
Right.
not an issue that's limited to us.
We have generally speaking 13 sponsors for 5 of the pieces of legislation, and then 3 sponsors for 3 of the pieces of legislation, I believe. So yes, we have. There's a Fly Quiet caucus in Congress, and so that's where we went to first. And we'll probably pick up other sponsors as time goes by. These were introduced about, 2 weeks ago? And so what you do is you introduce it, then you go back for a second wave and try and get them. Yeah.
It's just been fairly recently introduced then, so.
Yeah, these are just introduced in the last
One
couple of
last
weeks.
time to the Roundtable Board. I'm going
Can I ask one more question?
Mark. Oh, yes, Al.
I'm sorry. We do have some commitments from the airport, and I guess I'd be interested in Ivor's, I hate to put you on the spot, but initial response to a couple of these measures.
Well, you
Well,
did
these
put
measures
him
put me on the spot, so,
Well,
you know,
maybe
why
we can
would that
Diana
be any
should have
different? It's, there certainly needs to, you know, we've said this all along, is that the only way to get action is through federal legislation. So when I look at this, I think there's a lot of promise here. And so I think I'm supporting what needs to be done to help the community and address community issues. I don't know all the ramifications of the measures here. There's a lot of influence that it gives the airport, but also puts us in a really difficult position as well. So you know, I have to have more conversations and really understand how these start to gain traction and how they would be implemented. But you know, there's definitely a lot of promise here for the community, and we clearly have supported those efforts. So I probably skirted that more than you would hope, but it's
And I think you're ready for public office.
Really would help airports around the country to get
I'm
behind
gonna-
this legislation.
I think there's definitely pieces we will get behind for certain. There's some that are just, yeah, it just, I don't know how to, we could ever influence some of these or have a win for all communities with some of these.
But to be clear, Congresswoman Spears has spoken to Mr. Citero, and she's already said that we're going to talk and we're going to work on this.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been very clear about this.
She's been fantastic to want to talk through the initiatives with the airport. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Mark Adiego.
Yeah, I think you can just look at the day when HR 5106 becomes law, and imagine the pent-up political energy in the communities being unleashed on IFAR. There would be tremendous pressure. So maybe you would want to sign on to the idea of a curfew tonight.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, he could sign on for it, but he couldn't enforce it. Diane
Your congressmen
Pappen.
and senators.
Quick question. First of all, I appreciate the succinctness of this. You can get lost in a lot of words, especially when it comes to the work that's done at this roundtable. So I appreciate that much of what you've heard has now been whittled down to some pretty realistic goals. My question is, where does the FAA come in the process of getting this passed?
Well, the FAA would comment upon the bills for sure, and the FAA is going to do their best to express their opinion to committee staff, which is highly influential. So that's where they come in. I mean, it's ultimately up to the chair of the relevant committee to decide how much gets heard to begin with, and then probably how much goes forward. But that chair has to listen to membership as well, obviously. So the FAA certainly has its own role to play.
Okay.
And my comment about lawyers was about congressional lawyers. I didn't actually mean like local lawyers or anything.
Oh, no.
Food for thought on a daily basis, so it's all good. But let us know, if you would, in the future, if there's anything that this, collective elective body.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, there will be steps, sure. Someone once gave me a good rule of thumb for all politics, and that is a story is worth 1,000 facts. And so that's what we've got here. And I heard the same stories tonight that I heard when I was attending the roundtable regularly a few years ago. So
The select committee.
things are the same, and people express them in much the same way around the country. And members of Congress need to hear that. They need to hear the stories.
Well, thank you again, Kathleen and Brian, and our gratitude to the Congresswoman Eshoo and Spear and Panetta. So I'm going to open this up to public comment, and you'll have 2 minutes, and no one will respond. You get to go sit down. Yeah. The first one is Liz Lopez, followed by Lucy Romoli of Foster City? Yeah. Hey, Liz?
Well, actually, I was hoping for a response. I wanted to thank Kathleen Wentworth especially, and also Congressperson Spear and Eshoo and Panetta. This is really wonderful. But as far as the community, I know some people here, work on a national level in terms of community. And so what can we do as a community to help push these forward? And then number 2, has Congressperson Nancy Pelosi signed on as a sponsor yet?
By tradition, the Speaker of the House, no matter who the party or the Speaker, doesn't actually sign on to legislation typically. So that's just the way things work. In terms of what you can do, we're limited in what we can encourage you to do under House rules. But other people in other parts of the country have members of Congress. So I'll just leave it at that.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Lucy, and then Mark Schul, Palo Alto.
Is this on? Oh. So I echo compliments to Jackie's office. We really appreciate that. I had questions rather than comments, and they may have been answered, so forgive me. This is a national issue. We've got a green worm of noise across the nation, if you look at the noise graphs that are presented. And we've got to remember that we act locally to make a change nationally or globally. So I don't want to diffuse any of our energy that people have expended here, because this is a long process. It's a beginning, which is great. So I think you meant by sponsors, you are really, that answered my question, other representatives across the United States. Okay. Will your consideration be taking a look at this 65 decibel sound level? Could you consider taking a look at that? Because I've used Web Tracker, and the planes, my sound goes as high as 78 at the highest to 80. So I was wondering if that would be looked at.
So these, our questions should really pertain to what they just presented, and that was not part of it.
Well, I asked, buried within any of these, is anything in there? You don't need to answer. I can take it offline, Kathleen, if you want. Yeah, okay. And then there was one other note. Okay, so how do we behave differently with what is happening federally? And I don't know that you need to answer this now, but it's a lot of applause, but there's a lot of pain that is being felt that isn't going to go away. All right.
Understand. Yes, thank you. Okay, Mark Schul and then Jennifer from Sunnyvale.
I came across the legislation, I had some questions about it. You know what, I'm gonna pass.
You're going to pass? Okay. Jennifer from Sunnyvale. And then Mary Jo Fremont, Palo Alto.
Thank you, Kathleen, for coming up with these ideas and for the other congressional members for using their staff for these ideas as well. But I did have some questions and some concerns. The airline lobby, as we know, is extremely powerful in Congress, extremely powerful. They are probably one of the biggest contributors to political campaigns. So in trying to get these bills through, how will you counteract that power? You know, it's great that we're trying to do this. This is kind of the first step, but that's where I'm kind of going, you know, there needs to be a strategy here. The other thing is the airplane noise caucus that I know many of the congressional members are members of in California is very limited. And so that's of concern as well. You have to get this through both the House and the Senate. So I don't know what the strategy and how we can help, but that's something I guess we need to know, how as people and residents we can be helpful in getting this through with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Jo.
So I think it's a great start, so thank you, Kathleen and the others who worked on this. One thing I want to mention is it's probably old news for some of you, but in August last summer, the Department of Transportation, the Inspector General issued a report on the FAA Next Gen. And I hope you have seen this slide that the NorCal Metroplex is the only one across the country that had negative benefits, minus $7.5 million. So I can't comment on safety because I agree it's number one, but I'm not even sure that NextGen is safe because I've looked at stuff and it doesn't make me feel safe. I'm sure that efficiency doesn't work because that's how it was, measured, and I've looked at flight tracks, and I know that we have way more noise than before, so that we know across the board. So the question for Kathleen and more legislators is, what do we do? Here it is, we have an audit, we have a negative number across compared to the rest of the country, and what can we do? Because the point of a report is just to show that this is not working. So maybe, we do an undo of NextGen for the NorCal Metroplex, because obviously it's costing us money and it's putting a lot of pain on people. So just food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. We're all excited about this. It's just the first time I've heard of it. And what do? How can we move it along? We all want to get behind it and advocate for, if not every one of these, but some of them. I know that, Justin, we belong to the noise group. Is there a way that we can collaborate with them on this, or we can get them? Do you know if they are aware of something like this?
That is a good question. I could follow up with Emily.
Yeah. Do you think that that would be one of the ways that we could, expand our influence?
We could reach out to her.
Yeah. And so we will do all we can from this body to monitor the progress and work, offline, online, and throughout the communities to advocate for the passage of this. Okay? Thank you. The hour is getting later, and we still have a lot to go. The next report is our regular agenda. The Ground-Based Noise Committee met, and we're going to have the report from Ann Schneider. So Ann, would you like to give the report now?
First, I'd like to say that our chair for this committee is Councilman Ricardo Ortiz. They have a special council meeting tonight, so he is missing tonight's meeting because of council duties. We have had what I think is actually a series of very exciting meetings. There is a written report in the packet which is available online, but I'll just go quickly over this. The Airport Noise Committee has told us that vegetation can be one of the few things that can actually absorb sound. It can actually absorb sound better than man-made materials. That doesn't mean it's applicable in every place. So we had a discussion of trees and plant species that might be best for noise. Then there's something called a spectral analysis, and what that means is going back to the old data that was more A-weighted, but now trying to pull out C-weighted data from the historical data to find out what type of noise might be affecting the communities in and around the area. So right now we're looking at San Bruno, Millbrae, Burlingame, and Hillsborough. But I know that people from Brisbane believe that they're getting hit by blast noise too. So we'll start with those four and then keep expanding out to that. They're working on a report, and I'm going to pull Justin in a bit to give us an update. We're waiting for that any moment now. Data. Oh, and we're looking for 3 specific noise periods. We're looking for things that happened before the airport made a set of changes. So we're trying to see, first of all, what was the historic data just in general, then what happened during any airport changes in 2004, and then more currently after the runway changes, the opening of Terminal 1 and the hotel on there. So we're trying to pick up some data for that, and that report might be a little bit later. We have to get the background, the historical data first. We're planning on having another meeting in January, so some of these reports will get to us in January. The noise meetings, for anybody who is interested in these other types of noise, we meet here at the City of Millbrae. We meet at our rec center right next door. It is a morning meeting. We tend to jump around. It's not on any one set date or time, but I would imagine staff, if you're interested, make sure staff knows that you are. And it's always sent out in the regular performance. And the last thing, we're also talking about 2 other things. Noise, ground-based noise, backblast noise is different than the other noise. The measurement is different. The way you experience it is different. So we're hoping that staff will be putting together a noise 101 with a ground-based noise emphasis, and then we'll run it past the ground-based noise meeting first, and then hopefully bring it back to the roundtable so that we can all come up to the same speed on understanding what these differences are and how the measurements might be different. And finally, the report that we get, the director's report that comes out every month, is based on in-flight noise as opposed to ground-based noise. So we are trying to figure out what data points, and Al, you can help me with this, what data points might better reflect the experiences that the communities closer in are experiencing, how a report, it may be a separate report, it may be part of that report, surprise Ivar, that might report out more of that type of data. So I think I covered most of it. Justin, you might have more, and Al, if you've got anything to add.
Sure. Yeah, I could add. Both of our memos are complete, so we should be getting those out this week, hopefully. The first memo talks about the spectral data analysis that we did. We looked at sites 8 through 11 through 3 different time periods at all frequencies, looking at unweighted actually, so there's no filtering whatsoever based off of, different frequencies. I won't, I guess I could share some of the results, but essentially, the lower frequencies from 16 hertz to 40 hertz really were the loudest, obviously, at these sites on average. During the period, I would say, of the runway safety area construction, there was a 2 to 3 dB increase in those, on average, in those frequencies. But after the construction, there was actually a 4 to 5 dB decrease. And this is site-wide, I guess. This is just an average. We broke down the data based off of each site. We also analyzed by runway as well, so you'll see that in the report. And we could talk further at the next GBN meeting, looking at those details. We also did another memo for data, to request information and data to do the noise modeling. So we have that together of everything that we would need to conduct that analysis. So we should be able to get those to you this week and get your feedback.
Thank you.
I would
Thank
only,
you.
it doesn't show in the staff report, but I know that my community is experiencing noise where they haven't heard it before. There's so many variables to noise. It could be the changes in the weather. It could be a number of different things. But I want to point out to anybody watching, and it's going out in our city communication, that the airport is now actively soliciting all of us who live in close to start turning in the reports, because we're trying to identify neighborhoods where we will potentially cite the temporary monitors. I'm jumping ahead where we might be in a few months. But we need to hear from residents where they are experiencing this type of noise so that we can begin to kind of mark out what might be a good place for this. And I wish I had better vocabulary for it. It's pretty exciting, but right now, please use the new reporting structure so that we can try to say where this noise might be going. So for here in Millbrae, for example, the Meadows neighborhood, which is at the top of the hill, which actually was a hillside cut down to create the airport, they are experiencing backblast noise, which they'd never experienced before. So we're trying to just kind of figure out where we might put this testing in. I, for one, in the long run, will say monitor number 8. It's so close to the train station and the freeway and the airport that the data might not be all that useful for us. So when you talk about data not being useful, I understand. But this will help us figure out, given the experiences that we have, what might be the best places for the monitors.
Okay, thank you. Good report.
And thank you for getting the reports. They weren't sure they could get them done. That's exciting.
Yep.
Good.
That's great.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next item, which is update on the ground-based noise reports, the format and feedback timeline. And it says Bert, but I'm going to hand it over to Justin. And maybe you can update us on the settings. Yeah, that's where we talked about the settings.
Okay, sure.
Because you were going to get
Yes.
information. So maybe we do that.
Yes, I was just going to reiterate what I think I said in the technical, I get the meetings confused, the technical working group meeting. But it was basically that for the new system that's installed, but obviously there's still things that Bert and his team are working on. But once the vendor has looked at thresholds and durations that they recommend for each of the sites, that HMMH and the Roundtable would be happy to look at that and make any comments or
So essentially,
feedback on those recommendations to ensure that we're setting those correctly.
right, the settings, it's like data in, data out. If you've got good settings of your environment, such as, I know that Councilwoman O'Connell from Brisbane mentioned last meeting that if the sound was less than 8 seconds long, it just wasn't counted, and so who made that determination? Was that an FAA regulation? Was that a federal regulation?
Yeah.
Or was that an arbitrary decision that unless a sound was longer than 8 seconds, it just wasn't measured? But I know that people are getting maybe 5-second noise events, but every 30 seconds or 60 seconds or 90 seconds. And so that accumulates over time. So making sure those new monitors are set to monitor it.
Right, and that typically is, it's not just arbitrary, of course.
Okay.
But it is something that could change over time, of course, that you should relook at those settings to make sure the duration and the threshold are appropriate for that location. So
All right.
we'll be happy to look at that when
Any
Bert's-
questions from roundtable members on that? No, okay. No public questions, so no cards. The next one is having to do with the policy of placement of the portable noise monitors. You saw from Bert's slides that, you know, the existing monitors are being refitted out with the new monitors. There are, I thought we had 8. I guess we currently have 4, but we're getting 4 more, right? Okay.
Currently have 4.
Uh-huh.
We're getting 8 brand new.
Oh, we're getting 8. Oh, okay. We're getting 8 brand new ones. I knew we were going to get 8. So we need a policy. You know, in the last meeting, I said, well, we should just discuss this at a technical working group. And I go, oh, then I'm thinking, no, what we really need to do is reach out to our members like Hillsborough Al Royce, who seems very clear about, you know, how he wants to work it through his community, and maybe Brisbane, because you have monitors that you are. So I'm going to form a subcommittee, an ad hoc subcommittee, and I'd very, very be appreciated if Al and Terry, and I think Mike O'Neill, who's not here, I'm sorry he's not here, would, and Cecilia, Menlo Park. So, you know, 4 of you together could come together and meet informally. It's not a noticed meeting, and figure out some policy and procedures, how we can implement these 8 portable monitors in areas where your communities or other, you know, communities figure out guidelines, how that can be worked through, okay? Because we kind of feel like it needs to come up from the community, because you know your communities, your residents know your communities, and where the noise is now, where maybe it wasn't, you know, 20 years ago. Does that make sense? Will you serve on that committee? Oh, she's going to, Terry.
It does make sense, and I think that's a good idea. I think that we should work on what the rotation and what the guidelines are for all the member communities to get their place in line, and what kind of data is going to be helpful, what duration is going to be needed for placement, and what the airport noise committee can work with us in that.
Well, if you think that we have 8 monitors, and if they are placed in a location for a 3-month period of time, 3 times 8, that's 24 months. So in a year, ostensibly, every community could have a new monitor in a place. I don't know. But maybe you guys can work over the holidays and, you know, maybe New Year's Day or something, and come back, and come back in February with a little draft to present to us.
And yeah, just if you would involve Bert to make sure there's the reality of the resources, how the resources can support it. And also, I think the committee should wrestle with what about outlying communities? And I know we have done portable noise monitoring outside of the communities that are represented on the roundtable, so that needs to be addressed as well. Particularly, we've heard comments this today about that this evening. So.
Thank you. I had that in the back of my mind to say, but it didn't come up.
Yeah,
so thank you. He's my wingman. We do have a resident speaker card. Mary Jo Fremont, Palo Alto, wants to speak on this.
My favorite topic.
I know.
So I spoke about permanent noise monitors. Now we're talking about temporary portable noise monitors. And I don't know, I'm glad, at least Ivara, that you mentioned the outlying community, so thank you. But there's something that I still can't get. SFO is buying these monitors, the airport. SFO is a member of the community at large. So why is it that the SFO roundtable decides where these portable monitors are going? I pay my taxes, I pay my plane ticket to SFO, I get plenty of flight noise, and I can't get a monitor because this is decided by the San Francisco Roundtable, doesn't even pay for it. So you give me the logic here, but I am for equality. I'm a straight shooter. I don't have a hidden agenda. Put the monitors where the noise is. Look at Redwood City. Sorry, I don't know Redwood City. I don't want to pick on Redwood City. You have a permanent noise monitor. In September, it recorded 7 flights per day. That's great. I'm happy for these people. I'm not saying send the planes there. Why do you have a permanent noise monitor there? And why are you deciding where to put these portable noise monitors when you don't even know necessarily where the noise is today?
Thank you, Mary Jo. Good point. Okay. Yes, please do. Come on. It's for number 10. Yes. Lydia Koo, she's from the, well, Palo Alto, but the Santa Clara, Santa Cruz Roundtable. Welcome, Lydia.
Very much for giving me the time.
Sure.
I am here today on the noise monitors. I understand that they are portable. I'm from the city of Palo Alto, but I also serve as a member with the Santa Cruz, Santa Clara County, Santa Cruz, Santa Clara Roundtable. Yep. And, you know, noise has no borderlines. It has no boundaries. And I really appreciate Councilmember Terry O'Connell for saying that, you know, we should be looking at all communities. I just hope that that includes Santa Clara, especially City of Palo Alto, Los Altos, Sunnyvale, Mountain View, you know, that are highly impacted by San Francisco airport noise, planes going to San Francisco airport. So I would hope that you would include your sister roundtable in this decision. It's important for us. Thank you so much.
Okay. Point well taken. All right. Going on to, on the agenda, there is an item, just additional matters related to ground-based noise. If anyone had something else to say about it, it's just kind of a catch-all. Other than that, we're going to go on to item number 12, which is the night hush procedure status, and I'm going to turn it over to Justin. Night hush? Yes?
That's
No?
10.
Nothing
I
new
think
to report,
that-
other
do you
than
wanna
what's
do it?
been said.
Basically
Yep.
You did?
gave the update.
Okay, all right. So we're finished, but we do have a speaker card.
Oh, no, that was just about the night hush legislation.
Oh, no, oh, it says item 12. Yeah. Okay, but that's what it was. Okay. Okay. All right. So then let's go on to item 14, Pirate 2 status. Is that Justin?
No update at this
No
time.
update? Anyone have an update on the Pirate 2?
Go ahead.
Well, we have Mark and we have Rebecca. Rebecca?
I'll be quick, and it won't even take that long.
Okay.
This is on. So I think I brought the Pirate 2 up in the last meeting, so I won't spend a lot of time on it, other than to say that when that was designed, it came with a 060 heading that goes directly at Palo Alto. And so we now get inundated with a rail of pirate traffic. And while I understand people want to raise the altitude, it's been by the FAA multiple times that doing that shifts noise. So when you said to me, the airport director, that that doesn't happen, it does. It's not like, oh, let's go move it to Palo Alto. But you can see a pattern of noise and the track shifting. And so I just think that you need to keep that in mind. And again, I'm going to advocate that we should be on this roundtable because we're right over the border. And just again, and East Palo Alto is not here, but they whack us at like 3,000 to 4,000 feet. They're below that, and they're also not on this. So you really need to look at the larger community. The roundtable, and I think somebody said about it being antiquated in terms of looking at old acts. This is antiquated, right? It's not where the noise is in its entirety. So you really need to think about how to include those communities. That noise thing that Bert showed, which great job on that, it showed 3 routes converging over us. One of those is the pirate route. And it's not fair to keep shoving noise onto Palo Alto and blocking us from being part of this roundtable.
All right. Mark?
Yeah, so what I have in this hand, what I have in this hand is charts from where the oceanic arrivals were historically. Guess where they started in the 90s? The track over the Woodside Vor, 010. Where are they today? 060. And each of these charts has to do with an initiative by roundtable working groups to move it gradually south. There's two methods that do it. Initially, the methods were just move it south. That was even before Atherton and all you guys were part of the roundtable. Once you guys would be part of the roundtable, the new method was make the track higher over the Woodside Vor. They tested this with the FAA. The analysis by the FAA was they were unwilling to do it because it shifted traffic south. You can't make airplanes fly super steep. But you kept at it and went to higher powers, congressional, and got it done. And now, with Pirate itself, the Pirate change recommended by the Select Committee and the Roundtable basically insisted on 8,000. When that was redesigned, the FOIA data from the FAA showed that the FAA had been working on Pirate since 2013. So they just took the recommendations as an opportunity to make the changes they wanted to. But up until March of 2018, they had their track was 6,000 feet over the Vor, going to Menlo at 4,000 feet. Then there were some meetings, that's wrong because we committed. They raised it to 8,000 feet, which required them to move the track to 060, which heads to the middle of Palo Alto. So think about it. We're not in the roundtable, we're not part of any of this, and in all these years, based on recommendations that are documented by you, the track moved from 010 to 060 on top of Surfer. So I think we have some reasons to be a little bit peeved. Thank you.
Anyone else? Any roundtable member have anything to offer on that? Any additional matters related to departures? I mean, arrivals? Excuse me.
Elizabeth, excuse me.
Arrivals, yes.
Going to the last speaker, could we get some history on that? Is there? Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to see that.
Yes. So, item number 16. This item will speak to the collaboration that I have been advocating for. Councilmember, Mayor Ann Wingert from Portola Valley has been advocating for in lots of ways. And so having to do with a regional collaboration with the Santa Clara, Santa Cruz Roundtable, us, and the Oakland, so that we don't do things like this in a vacuum. Ann, can you kind of update us where we are with this?
I wish I had a more robust update, just because we're running into challenges certainly in getting this off the ground because of the clear challenge of having three bodies working together. This group is very well established, so I think we have a huge leg up, and that's, I think, why we're trying to really help drive. Lydia Koo is one of the SCSC members as well who has participated with us, and I think the cooperation there is very strong, and everybody's starting to work together, and I think they are still in more of a nascent stage, so they still have a few growing pains, but I think as they move through that, it's going to be a lot more likely that we'll be able to move everybody forward at the same speed. Oakland, however, has been probably the most difficult nut to crack to date, and we've had many outreach attempts, and we're about to try another one to see whether we can't finally bring them to the table. And I think we're also contemplating, and is Kathleen still here?
Yes.
Enlisting potentially some of our congressional representatives to potentially help in getting some of this off the ground as well, because I think one of the biggest sort of predictors of our success from 2017 in the Select Committee really came from the fact that we had the congressional support as a body, and that it may in fact require some of that similar support to get this back on track as a sort of successor entity potentially to the Select Committee. So there's a lot of things still in play, but I'm hoping that by early January, we will have a meeting set, and hopefully Oakland will be at that meeting. And once we can bring them in, I think we'll be successful in at least having the initial conversations. So, and it's really very much to the point that you're all making tonight about larger community. I share your views. The boundaries, the noise does not stop at the end of my town or at Palo Alto's boundaries. It goes throughout the region. So it's very much that approach, and I'm hoping that we'll have a greater momentum that we can pick up in 2020. So that's my report.
Thank you. Anne, you.
And when you get that going and you're working on the agenda, and I think I've talked to you about this, can you also ask them if they have interest in ground-based noise?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
who those communities might be so that we can start forming that partnership too?
Sure, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sure.
Any other roundtable member have a comment on that? Okay, stay tuned. We're really trying our best. Item number 17. Now, Justin, this has got to be your item, aviation noise and news update.
Really?
Yes. You going to do that?
Sure, sure. Do we have time this time?
Yes, we have time this time.
Okay, all right.
It's 9:08. I think the last
I'll
time
be
it was
quick.
like
I'll
way
be
late.
quick.
Actually, he even have.
Thank you, Anthony. Go ahead and go to the next one. Next, oh, yeah.
What's that?
Oh, no, not that one.
It's a real advantage.
Okay, so this was a carryover from my last noise news that was postponed. Obviously, the FAA Reauthorization Act of 2018, there were a number of different efforts. FAA recently awarded MIT and Boston University a grant to conduct the potential health and economic impact of overflight study. I just wanted to bring that to attention. The noise ombudsman, which I believe are the current CEOs in training, are obviously have been participating in various roundtables and conferences. There's also a study on DNL alternatives that should be submitted by the end of the year. And also a report on community involvement practices for next-gen Metroplex projects. I won't go into the details. I believe that report is late in being delivered to Congress. I'm not sure exactly why it's been held up, but I will follow up on that. The House Quiet Skies Caucus gave the FAA administrator 30 days to answer 45 questions. I posted the link here to that letter if anyone wants to look over those questions. And obviously, the caucus has a serious lack of, a serious concerns in the lack of responsiveness from the FAA.
Well,
Yes,
yeah.
we can,
Mhm.
yes. There were 2 advisory circular updates that I thought would be worth noting. One's community involvement on airport planning, which documents changes in standards and expectations for community involvement in airport planning since the previous version was done in 1975. There's also an update draft to the guidelines for sound insulation. Provides more guidance in testing procedure and how to manage programs for sound insulation. Those comments for that draft are due December 6th. We're currently working with a number of agencies such as ACI to provide comments on that draft. There's been a number of delays in Metroplex projects, and this could be due to increased community concerns. I will say there's an update in that the final EA for the Denver Metroplex was issued, and the draft EA for the Las Vegas Metroplex was recently released for public comment. Airbus actually announced its VOOM service, which is a helicopter service in the Bay Area. Just something worth noting, and helicopter flights would operate between SFO and 4 other Bay Area airports. And you can see the pricing there.
That's going to be loud. That's a whole different.
$200 round trip, yep.
What are the other 4 locations, Justin?
I don't know. San Jose is one of them for sure.
So SFO to San Jose.
Probably San Carlos.
Probably San
Oh,
Carlos.
yes, there's one. Oh, thank you. Thank you
San
very much.
Carlos.
So the integration of urban air mobility, this is a big topic currently going on, and there's a nonprofit association that was formed to look at integration into communities through education and communication. There's more than 200 electric vehicles concepts being explored around the world today. So there's a big movement in trying to understand and gauge how those vehicles will integrate in existing transportation systems. And that's it for me.
Wow.
In the
That's
quick-
really
the
looking
quick
at,
version.
yeah, looking through the future. Any member of the roundtable? Al, do you have a question?
Justin, has there been any update on the supersonic standard changes?
Not that I'm aware of, no. I could look into it a little bit more and maybe provide like an update on that in the next.
I would like to understand that, number one. And number two, I understand that even if they're changed, they may not fly into SFO. And I'd like to understand what we can do to ensure they fly into LA and not here.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
Oh, yeah,
Any other
you
member
stop
have a
the-
question for
question.
Justin? Oh, Cecilia?
Yes, I have. My question is about the Airbus boom service. When did it start, and where does it fly in and out of?
Yes, we're.
Because I have a lot of traffic besides SFO over my community.
Yeah.
I think it was just
Do a Google search.
airport to airport at the moment.
Yeah, airport to airport.
San Carlos Airport to Palo Alto?
No, I
or-
don't think
I
they
don't
were
think it
doing
was-
Palo Alto yet, or
Yeah.
San Carlos.
I would have to look it up and let you know. I could get back to you though on more details.
I think
Thank
Bert
you.
has some input on this. Yes?
We've been tracking this for about 8 months, and it actually started before that. There are 4 carriers right now. We've been trying to track by call sign or anything like that. Doesn't work like that. It's chartered helicopters, so they run here, there, and everywhere, and it's a matter of what the pilots pick up and go with. Typically a Jet Ranger or something like that by Bell, but they're not anything specific belonging to a specific company that we have seen so far. I've been trying to work with the tower to find call signs. They don't have them. Talk to Signature Aviation. They say that they don't have call signs. It's individuals, sort of like an Uber.
Wow, wow.
It is Palo Alto.
That's crazy. Yeah. All right, Anne.
Couple of questions, but Bert, on the helicopters, when they leave San Francisco, what path are they using? Or is that what you're saying, they can go any way they want to go?
Depends on where they're going. They go to Petaluma, they go to Palo Alto, they go to Hayward, they go to Oakland, they go to San Jose.
Do they need approval from SFO to land?
FAA.
Yeah.
Then I had one other question.
Okay.
Justin, when you talked about the AC 150/5009B, the sound insulation
Oh,
program.
yes.
Are they looking at anything in terms of materials for sound absorption versus bouncing?
Yes.
For a technical term.
No, it wouldn't be any updates in terms of treatment protocols.
Kathleen, I know that's not in the list of lovely 8 legislation, but I think we're getting to the point that we need to start looking at building materials that absorb rather than bounce sound. We're not there yet with the ground-based noise meeting, but to do our announcements, we broke ground today on our TOD2 project right by the airport, and bouncing versus absorption is really critical, and we need to move on it as quickly as possible.
Okay. All right. I do have one speaker slip on item number 17 for Justin. Liz Lopez, San Francisco.
Wow.
And that's it.
Phil.
Hey, Justin.
They're actually pretty dangerous. They have
So I had a question about I don't know what it's called, but it's the noise study or the sleep study that was done. It was a year ago or a year before that, and I think it wasn't due until 2020, but it's been already completed for over a year now. Do we know anything about when that's coming out? I think the FAA was stalling on that for a long time, and they still are. Is that still the case?
That is still the case, yes.
Okay, and when is it? It's actually due 2020 where they have to release it, or they don't actually ever have to release it?
That's what I'm told, is that they have to release it, yes.
Sometime in 2020, or?
Yes, but it doesn't, just keep in mind, it doesn't necessarily dictate any policy or anything. It's just a
Right.
research.
Right, but there's a reason that it's being stalled, so I'm just curious. And then also, if you could touch on the drones and Uber Air?
Uber Air.
And drones.
And drones?
Yeah.
I could add it to my list of
I mean,
things.
like what tracks? Are they still going to be using like the same tracks? Or is it kind of like part of the superhighway where these are just going to come over?
I think they're still trying to figure that out right now, is my understanding, and part of integrating with local communities and setting standards is figuring out what kind of infrastructure and what that all looks like in terms of where and how, and talking about Airbus's Voom service. If you go to JFK and you pull up Uber, your app will actually show helicopter, service. So Uber Air is already kind of being implemented.
But with helicopters?
With helicopters, yes. So, but there's things regarding infrastructure needs and helipads and various things that they're trying to figure out right now.
Okay. And then can the public comment on that at all, or are we just pretty much omitted from that conversation?
I think those conversations are starting to happen, and I think it's through various organizations.
Can you look into that for us? Because I think most of the people here would be interested in, possibly drones coming into the mix as well.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Liz, for all your questions. All right, I think, Cecilia, yes.
My question is, do drones and Uber Airs require an EIR or CEQA or something?
Give us a document.
No.
Like surveyor.
Even, okay. Thank you.
Okay. So moving on to our member communications and announcements. Any roundtable members, you announced that you broke ground today already?
This is actually something else. At the League of California Cities Conference in October, I attended a transportation workshop and brought up the issues that we were having. The National League of Cities lobbyist, and I didn't bring her card for her name, was the one who said, "Sorry, Ann, we can't protect ourselves from drones. We can't protect ourselves from the helicopters. It's coming." Then we actually had a side meeting and talked about backblast noise. So the National League of Cities is very interested. They're amazed. They hadn't heard about ground-based noise anywhere in their work. So I want to bring her out to Millbrae in general, but it might be great to bring her out here when we're talking about those partners to help us. It was really depressing hearing that we may have no say, but to me, every time I hear a helicopter, that's an accident on 101 or a child being stabbed. I don't have good memories here. The helicopters hover over here, and it's never good news. My other announcement, Assemblyman Mullen had a meeting. I know there were at least 5 of us there yesterday. He announced that one of the pieces of legislation he's running is on climate change. Obviously, every airplane, every transportation thing has a climate change action. We don't really work on particulates, but I mentioned particulates, and he mentioned that he's very interested in the discussion of particulates and other issues into his climate change reports. So there's another potential ally. And with that, I would like to say that today we did break ground on what's called our gateway at Millbrae Station. Those are the BART parking lots on the other side of the railroad tracks. This is today we're going to start, BART is going to start restriping to add more parking in the garage. But about mid-January is when the asphalt will start getting torn up and the grading will begin on all 4 buildings all at the same time. So we're excited. This is yay. High-speed rail put the kibosh on our other project until we can work through that. But I would like to tell all of you, if you can tell your residents that there won't be as much parking and there will be changes on Millbrae Avenue. It is going to be different for the 2 years under construction, but with it we get 400 housing units, 100 of them low affordable, a new hotel, and hopefully a microbrewery. So just please be aware that Millbrae Avenue is going to be quite different, and if you come in from other areas, plan on catching the train in your own town.
I was just going to say train out.
Yeah, take the train on up, and we welcome you, we want to have you, but hopefully our second TOD project will get through with high-speed rail by March, and we'll break ground there too. That's on both sides of the BART station.
Okay, anyone else? Anyone else? All right, with that, we're adjourned. Happy Christmas.
And it was so generational. The people